It was an ordinary summer afternoon in downtown Chicago, the kind where the sidewalks burned with heat and the sirens echoed off concrete buildings. A black man in his late 30s, wearing a plain black t-shirt, jeans, and dark sunglasses, stood calmly at the curb near a high-security government building. His name was Derek Lawson. To every passerby, he looked like just another civilian, calm, silent, and entirely non-threatening. But inside that calm exterior existed a man who had seen things others couldn't imagine. A man who had spent 2 decades climbing through the covert corridors of America's most classified operations. A man whose clearance was above top secret. A man who had just last week briefed the president on a potential cyber attack. And yet, despite all his experience, all his sacrifice, and all his service to the country, Derek Lawson was about to experience a humiliation so deep it would rattle even his iron composure. As he waited for his secure ride, a police cruiser slowed to a stop nearby. 2 officers, both white and visibly irritated by the heat, stepped out. They glanced at Derek, then at each other. One muttered something and approached. "Hey. Can't loiter here," he said sharply. Derek turned his head slowly, calm as ever. "I'm waiting for a car," he said simply. "Show me some ID," the officer barked. Derek reached into his back pocket slowly, calmly, as years of intelligence training kicked in. But before he could even pull out his wallet, the second officer had circled around and grabbed his arm. "I said now." The first one shouted. Within seconds, Derek found himself pinned against the wall, his face pressed into hot concrete, his sunglasses falling to the ground. Passersby looked but didn't intervene. Some pulled out phones. One child asked her mother, "Why are they hurting that man?" No one answered. Derek didn't resist. He knew the drill. He had seen it too many times. When they finally pulled his wallet from his back pocket, the officer opened it, hand, froze. There it was, an ID marked with a gold federal seal of the Office of National Intelligence. Below it, a name. Chief Derek J. Lawson. The second officer stepped back, stunned. "What the hell?" he whispered. The first officer's hands trembled slightly as he read it again. Chief of what? Derek stood up, dusted himself off, and took back his ID. "Chief of National Counterintelligence and Covert Operations," he replied. Silence fell. The crowd had gathered now. The phones were still recording. One older man said, "He just briefed the president last week." Another whispered, "That's the guy from the cybercrime task force." The officers stumbled over apologies. Derek looked them in the eyes. "The problem," he said, "is that even with this badge, I still look like a suspect to you." He turned, got into the arriving black SUV with government plates, and drove away. But the moment didn't end there. A clip of the officers tackling a national intelligence chief went viral within hours. News anchors debated it. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #HeIsTheChief and #LookAgain trended worldwide. But for Derek, it wasn't about fame or revenge. It was about the truth. The uncomfortable truth that no level of achievement, no badge, no title could erase centuries of prejudice. That day, he didn't file charges. He didn't fire back with power. Instead, he requested the 2 officers attend federal sensitivity and awareness training personally delivered by his department, and he showed up on the first day to speak. "This isn't about me," he told them. "It's about all the people like me who don't have a badge to protect them." His voice was calm, but firm. The room was silent. One officer cried. Derek finished with, "You judged me before you knew me." That is the heart of the problem we face today. The training session became a model across federal agencies. His department launched a national campaign called See Deeper, promoting awareness, equity, and critical thinking in law enforcement. Schools invited Derek to speak. Documentaries featured his story. He became a symbol not of victimhood, but of powerful grace. Behind closed doors, his department saw massive reforms. Recruitment changed. Psychological screenings were introduced. And quietly, Derek's approach reshaped the system. How one incident had changed an entire institution. And every officer now knew, the man you pushed to the wall today might be the man you report to tomorrow.
Oh.
That was Derek Lawson's legacy. That was the day the streets of Chicago met the chief of intelligence, not by title, but by truth. The story didn't end there. Weeks later, during a congressional hearing on national security, Derek was called in to testify. He didn't talk just about cyber threats or foreign espionage. He talked about domestic perception, about how national security was not only breached by outsiders, but also weakened by internal bias. His speech was raw and real, sparking a conversation that echoed beyond politics. Media outlets covered his testimony with headlines like, "The Chief Speaks Truth to Power." Inspired by Derek's actions, several city departments across the U.S. initiated reforms in community policing. Law enforcement academies began adding new curriculum focused on empathy, perception, and psychological conditioning. Universities included his incident in courses on criminal justice and race relations. Meanwhile, Derek stayed behind the scenes, working even harder to bring systemic change. He believed this wasn't a moment for personal glory, but a mission to reset national consciousness. His team launched a platform called Human First, an initiative that connected law enforcement, social workers, and educators. Through it, thousands of community events were hosted where officers sat across from civilians and listened to really listen to each other. And as the years passed, that one humiliating moment outside a federal building became the spark for one of the largest national empathy campaigns America had ever seen. Derek was later awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It's not for his intelligence service alone, but for his service to truth. He accepted it not with pride, but with purpose. Because he knew he was not just speaking for himself, speaking for millions. And so, his legacy became a living reminder that true leadership is not about how loud you speak, but how deeply you listen. The world learned his name not because he demanded it, but because his actions made silence impossible.